I could have gotten it.
Larry, you gotta be nice to me.
Hey, Carla. Good.
What, you got the name? I thought you were gonna have a broad under.
You're fine. Just trying to get organized.
You're fine. Matt's in order here.
Yeah.
I can't hear it either. All the time. I'm not getting it. I used to be able to hear it.
All right, we'll call the public hearing to order on the request for a conditional use permit from Lawrence and Jessica King. I feel like we should maybe just do a background, maybe to get everybody on the same page, probably.
You sure could do that?
I just to make sure everybody's on the same page here. So the Kings have had their home residence about 5 years, is that correct?
Over 5 years.
And home and shop there for about 5 years in a residential neighborhood, and have their business there at the property. In about June of this year, we had a citizen complaint that came to the Planning and Zoning Committee, and clarification was sought regarding home occupation in a residential 1 zoned area. The Planning and Zoning Committee discussed that issue, and we felt that it needed to be moved up to the City Commission. We are recommending board, so we looked at the ordinance, felt that it was kind of a violation of the ordinance, so we moved it on to the City Commission. July 8th, the City Commission met, discussed the issue, and the City Commission recommended that the Kings either request to rezone their property commercial or request a conditional use permit. So the Kings have requested a conditional use permit in order for them to continue using their residential property as their home occupation, their commercial business. So as part of that process, we have a public hearing. That's what we're doing right now. At the close of the public hearing, our Planning and Zoning Committee will make a recommendation, one way or the other, to the City Commission. Regardless of what we decide here, it ultimately goes to the City Commission for them to make the final decision. So I just want to make sure we're all on the same page. There's a lot of different things going on here. So
How do you want to proceed for the public hearing? Do you want to go circular, or?
I think we can. Did the city receive any public?
So we've got input from the renters. George and Judy Levy called me today, and then Amanda also came in and said they all, none of them had any objections.
Oh, no objections. Okay.
I think people should probably raise their hand.
Yep.
You call on them and then.
Sounds good. And this is the time for everybody to voice their opinion on this issue. So, who's up first?
I can, you want me to go all the way up?
Sure can. I think it's easy to hear on the recording as well when they're up close. So.
try to put all my stuff so I stay on point, not jump all over the place. You know, thank you all for coming here, regardless of your opinions or feelings. We appreciate everyone's input. I don't want to reiterate anything. This is sort of the third meeting that we've had on this, so I feel like the committees and the board and the community in general, you know, has either followed it or not. So I don't want to rehash everything. The initial complaint was a safety concern for their children and then evolved over time into a list of complaints, which I'll attempt to address each one this evening. As far as safety goes, it has been and always will be our first priority. With any vehicle or equipment, we are always cautious when entering any roadway, whether it's 4th Avenue, 5th Avenue, 83, etc. When we are operating equipment, it is for permitted improvement within our property line. One exception would be when we would mobilize the equipment. Usually we do it early spring, maybe mid, you know, just depending on where weather is, you know, to various job sites, which it stays for most of our work season, which until around freezes. The other would be when we're moving snow or maintaining alleys around the property. At times we'll maintain the one that runs in front of Bill and Lucy Try-Ons, which we use as an access point, and then the other road that runs along both of the coulees that we own, we'll take the skid steer out there, kind of recollect the gravel and place it back. And, you know, everybody knows snow removal is a necessity here. I feel like this kind of covers both their noise and traffic complaints, since the vehicles and equipment are not brought back and pulled on a daily basis during the work season are really brought back at all unless we're using them for ourselves. To address the road integrity complaint, these roads are built to specific DOT specs to handle an assortment of vehicles and equipment. And as I stated before, we're not a corporate hub. We don't have vehicles coming and going. Sometimes it's a dually. Is that a commercial vehicle or not? You know, so we're not a big operation. It's Blue and I. Additional complaints now have included aesthetics and bringing down property values in our neighborhood. This one, to be honest, I'm at a loss for words. Our entire property, all 4 parcels, were full of trash. We hauled out countless loads of debris and garbage, you know, refrigerators. I mean, at one point, we didn't know that whole area was used as a dumping ground. I don't believe this person complained about the aesthetics or value during that time. In addition, we are not finished with our improvements and will continue to work through to the coulees. The remaining items on their complaint list were environmental and damage to the river. These complaints are completely unfounded with no evidence to back this claim. I've already disclosed our infrequent use of equipment on the property. However, I mean, we all hire people out at some point to do site work, home improvements, snow removal, etc. In addition, the individuals that brought forth the complaint have had themselves hired out work on their property. Were they not worried about the safety of all of our children operating that equipment, road and environmental integrity, as well as noise to their neighbors while they were improving their property? The other thing that I'm also extremely concerned about is the amount of research and stalking they have done. They have an itemized list of everything we own. The only things missing from that list are my Tahoe and Ranger, which are parked in our garage, and a new camper we have. They have gone as low as to take pictures of Blue working and posting it with snide remarks on a social media platform. I feel like they're evolving their complaints to just kind of see what'll stick to us and maybe upset enough people around us. And, you know, we really hope to put this matter to rest so we can move forward and continue living as we have been. And that kind of wraps up what I think. Okay.
Thanks. Anyone else? Anyone else have a comment? Sure, come on up.
Come up and have the floor. My name is Reese Bam. I had the concern initially, just so everyone knows. We have packets for the group to review as we go through the talking points. We have a few copies available for the individuals in the room, but not for all. So if you do want a copy, just say the word.
I would like one.
Okay, thank you for your time today. Just wanted to start this off with the fact that our family made a committed decision to establish Washburn, North Dakota as our home. My wife and I have 2 very young children. Now considering expanding our family and investing in our house and or property, involvement in the community is very important to us. And into our family unit. We take pride in being good residents of Washburn and do our best to be involved with the community, to shop within the community, to utilize the amenities that Washburn has in place. Our security within that family life plan and community is, in general, unsettled at this point. As we did not choose to live near a contractor's yard, but currently are, we are appreciative that we have a few moments of your time to outline the reason for our uncertainty. For our perspective, please look at that document bundle. Page 1 and 2 contain the public notices, the public notice as stated and publicized in the paper for this process, and then the conditional use permit application, which lacks a condition. Both documents are less than transparent. We would like to add clarity in that the address for the conditional request is 311 Fifth Avenue. And the use of the property for the last 5 years considers the operation of a Class A licensed corporation, A&C Land Development. We want to note that this path forward for this conditional use consideration does not address our concern, as it really changes nothing. The conditional is to continue to use the property, and there's no change in that. If you look at page 3, you'll just see the general planning and zoning outline for Washburn. And we've marked out approximately where these properties are. And then page 4 provides an aerial view of the local area. Please note the property requesting the conditional is outlined in red, and our home address, home lot is in blue. And the red striped line with hash marks is the ingress egress that we're most concerned about. If you go to page 5 and 6 of the document bundle, you'll find proof, state documents, North Dakota State website, of the corporation establishment in 2012 and the Class A licensure in 2015 for A&C Land Development. Please also view the hierarchy of classes on page 7 to give you some example of what a Class A licensed business is. It can bid jobs $500,000 or greater. I want to point that out. And also, if you go back to page 5, which is important for us to note, that the principal address and the mailing address are the same for this business. We do understand the mailing address is priority for a business to get mail, but the principal address in which business is conducted is quite different. Page 5 through 11 is purely for the information to provide scale and context to the magnitude and potential of business scope. You'll find Class A example, Class B example, Class C example. Our example for Class A would be a Northern Improvement Company. Prairie View Landscaping Nursery, north of Bismarck, is a Class B, and then two constructions surround out C and D. Our concern, largely, is that when we read the ordinance here for planning and zoning, subpart 117.3.3 land suitability on page 11 of your ordinance, it states that no land shall be used for a purpose which is held incompatible with adjoining uses or any condition likely to be harmful to the health, safety, or welfare of the people in the area. We find that the operation of a Class A licensed corporation, ANC Land Development, at 311 Fifth Avenue, operating in an R1 residentially zoned area of Washburn, is a nuisance and disruption to our rights within the planning and zoning ordinance.
What, excuse me, what page did
Page
you say?
11.
Page 11. Okay.
Page 11 of the ordinance. So please view the pictures of the site from the vantage of our property and or street. Just like to point that out. Note the equipment, if you want to go through those pages. Page 12, dump truck, heavy trailer, totes, auxiliary equipment for skid steer materials. Page 13 is an excavator trailer behind that dump truck. Page 14, you'll find 2 excavators, and see that similar view on page 15. For the concern that we have, we cite the following conditions. Safety in general is the number one concern. We do have a young family and are concerned about the safety in the neighborhood. Heavy commercial activity is inherently dangerous. Commercial activity from the property that we've noted has increased from 2018 to 19 with the addition of pieces of equipment and frequency of ingress-egress traffic. We know as this much, 1 loader, 2 excavators, 1 dump truck, heavy-duty trailers. That's all we've ever mentioned. We don't have a running list of items for the property. Those are the large pieces. That's what we wanted to talk about. So large commercial equipment units are not able to stop precisely, and obstructions in view are common. The frequent ingress-egress activity within the residentially zoned area poses a threat for both motorists and pedestrians. Our attention has been heightened, priority given to our family safety, friend safety, neighbor safety. If you see picture 16, you'll see the egress of a loader, and we do have a video here. Hopefully everyone can see that. Taken from a window of our house. We would just like to note that the front end loader doesn't slow down or stop as it rolls through that egress. Everyone get a chance to see that again. Noise is a nuisance from commercial property. It conflicts with the zoning of the R1. Heavy equipment motoring in and out is a noise disruption. The commercial equipment in the contractor yard is used for commercial jobs and travels to and from the residential site to job sites to conduct business. Property value, we did note that as a concern. That's very true. Residential property value decreases with increased traffic, aesthetics, and noise created of a commercial property or contractor yard. Supply piles, auxiliary equipment, and supplies alongside the general outlay of a commercial property, which generally lack vegetation. And if you were to look at page 4 of your packet with the aerial from the mapping, you can see just that. Is largely compacted grounds for driving and parking of equipment, does not bode well for adjacent residential property value. We don't have a percentage for you. It's a very, very difficult one, but we do know there's an effect to that. Infrastructure. Street infrastructure in a residentially zoned area is not built to withstand the wear and tear of frequent commercial industrial traffic. Only intermittent vehicles such as a garbage truck or delivery vehicle. Our concern lay with the eventuality of expedited maintenance on those overburdened streets and the financial implications of the special assessment taxes charged to the community. The drainage of the area is also a concern. From a commercial site, no vegetation. Heavy runoff of sediment has likely impacted the culvert under 4th Avenue. Such a scenario could potentially lead to the very same thing we saw on Main Street here with a full culvert and a failure. For recent projects, residents have seen specials in tens of thousands of dollars. Zoning helps to protect that investment, but residential investment is at risk with this scenario. Precedent. Our final concern is the potential precedent that may be set if the scenario of ordinance violation is tolerated further. The entire city of Washburn could potentially be affected by the proceedings in this scenario where the resident rights are being overlooked. Right now, we're speaking to a situation that's very local to our property, our concern with a specific business. But our fear is that the rest of the town will eventually be affected by the acceptance of this type of ordinance violation where one does what they want and asks for the forgiveness later. Summary, we all have choices to make in life. Right now we have a choice to control the controllable. The controllable aspects of a zoning consideration to mitigate risk. At the end of the day, we ask the Washburn's Planning and Zoning Committee to consider a non-recommendation for the continued operation of a Class A licensed corporation, A&C Land Development, at the address of 311 Fifth Avenue. Such recommendation is in alignment with the Washburn Planning and Zoning Ordinance 117.3.1, Washburn 2020 Plan, which ensures a continued avoidance of land uses which pose negative impacts on one another, encourages the most appropriate use of land in the city, and separates and controls nuisance producing uses, which ultimately minimizes the adverse effects and impacts on the surrounding areas. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
If I could have one more minute. I forgot a few pages of the packet. If you look at page 17, with the consideration of the runoff in the bottom of the coulee, we do have concern with that. You can see what's a debris pile on 17, and then it being burned on 18. We do understand there was a burn permit put in for that, but it's still a consideration. Then 19, 20, and 21. 19 and 20 indicate, a visual on traffic that's ingress and egress from the property. As you can see, the tracks. And then 21 is just a general view of the culvert area at the site. Thank you.
Anyone else like to speak?
Question, said that the payloader runs through or run off an alley, is there a stop sign or yield sign at that point?
I don't believe so.
No.
No. You definitely could put one in there. I mean, yeah.
Case in point being, no law was violated by going through that. We all do it.
Yeah.
Stop signs, about twice as the next one.
Yeah.
I was just gonna add, I live right behind
You want to
them.
come up or?
Sure.
Right.
I live right behind the Kings, and when I moved here about 4 years ago, we didn't have much issues, but now with this business growing, awesome that it's growing, that it has been a concern of the noise, the in and out of the alley coming onto the 4th Avenue. I know I can't afford more specials that keep going up. So that's our main concern, is the thieves that will keep coming out with constant in and out of this heavy equipment daily on 4th Avenue. The safety and concerns of even my pet and our future kids. Sometimes my dog might run out in the middle of the street. He might just get out seeing a squirrel run across the street, just things like that comes into play with that safety issue, and those big machinery cannot stop on a dime. I know vehicles can't either, but the fact is those machinery is higher up, they're faster, you can't see where you're going if it's something small. And so that's just our main concern with that issue. It was nothing ever against them personally, it's about the business in a residential area. So, that was,
Okay, so I own the property like across the alley, it's like 408, I think.
So, the little house over there.
Okay. So, I'm kind of thankful that that area got developed. In the 40 years that I've been part of the fire department, I can't tell you how many different times we were asked to go down there and burn it up and clean it out because it becomes rat and skunk haven. So I can see that's never going to happen again because it's been developed. It looks nice. You know, I'm there a lot more. I'm at my place a lot more often than people realize, and I go by there and I notice that yes, they got big equipment. I don't see it there all that often, so they must only bring it when they're done. Bring it back when they're done with the project or that needs to be worked on, as far as I can see. I don't know that. Yeah, big equipment is just that, big equipment. I've driven over-the-road trucks, operated big equipment for, I don't know, about 30 years of my career. I drive school bus now, and I tend to see that when I come to an intersection, it's a lot easier for me to see what's coming than cars, evidently, because I'm a little higher, and because I'm bigger, I creep through it. I may not stop at an intersection that doesn't have a stop sign, but I creep through it because I know I have big equipment. So, I don't know, this is Washburn. We're not in the middle of Bismarck. As I said, I'm thankful that the area got developed, that it turned from what it was to what it is. I would really hate to see that development stopped. Yes, they operate a commercial business. I guess I do too. But the address of my business is where I live, which isn't where my business is. I guess I'm a developer also, because I own a few properties that were not much of anything, and I'm trying to make them into something else or something better. Washburn doesn't get better unless we work forward on it. Sometimes a business in the middle of something isn't such a bad idea. You don't really see it from a lot of different places. I don't see that it's going to bring the value of my property down any, you know, because what's across from it's in better condition than it was before. Across the street from where this property is a church, and I understand that they're zoned as residential, but on Sundays and other days they're quite commercial. There's an awful lot of traffic coming and going, and a lot of people, I don't know, in my career as being a commercial driver, I don't worry about commercial drivers near as much as I worry about other folks in cars, as far as being careful about what they drive. So, I guess my opinion is I think they're in an okay place.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else?
I was here at the other meeting too, and
Do you want to come up?
sure about that. I was here at the other meeting too in July, and first of all, I'm glad that he has heavy-duty trailers because he's got all kinds of axles, which makes it less wear and tear on the road. He is not overloaded. He is probably, when you look at his equipment, and I partially do this for a living, he has more than enough capacity to carry what he's carrying. The term frequently was used. I don't see that. I haven't seen Blue come by my house since July. But as his wife stated, they take everything out pretty much in the spring unless they have to repair it. They bring it back in the fall. In fact, for a while, I thought you let down because I haven't seen you come by. When when he comes by, it's at a very slow rate of speed, very cautious. The thing about young children being concerned, I'm not trying to downplay that concern, but to me, that's like saying that either farmers shouldn't have children or they should have them off-site. Because if farm children are taught with big equipment and everything else, when it fires up, you head to the house or you do whatever. We're responsible for our children. He's not going to drive through their yard. But if they're playing on the street, they're more apt to get hit by a car or someone going faster than by a commercial vehicle. As far as wear and tear in the streets, it's a necessary evil, but nothing puts more wear and tear in our streets than a garbage truck. I mean, they're very heavy. We went through that, Larry, when we were looking for that bid thing. That's the biggest wear and tear. Those guys zoom down the streets. I mean, they've got all these things to pick up. I don't see that with them. They're very cautious, very concerned. Another thing, he lives at the tail end of Frank Weiss's old junkyard, and they have cleaned it up. They have increased, in my opinion, the property values around that area. So I'm disputing some of these claims, as you can see, because that's the way I see it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Another thing, he's been there 5 years. And if this was such an issue, then all of a sudden, how come now it's getting jumped on when there was opportunity before, when he was in the building stages, to pull the reins back? So that's just a thought of mine.
To add to that comment about how he's lived here for 5 years, is because the fact that, as I stated, is that when I first moved here 4 years ago, there wasn't an issue. It wasn't as bad as it is now. It's constant. It's coming in and out constantly, and that's where, to set the precedence of, that's where these ordinances are in place for this reason, and that if it's not addressed, people are going to keep doing it, and more people are going to keep doing it. I know I wouldn't want to see multiple farm equipment in someone's backyard that lives right next to me. That's the exact same thing.
Well, what you're asking to do is bankrupt, we should put him on business.
Not exactly.
You don't know,
No.
you don't know that.
It's not our fault that in the first place that it was done that way.
Who was on the commissioner's side?
Well, that's exactly it. It's the city, and they need to fix it.
You can address them now.
I have a question. What do you mean by constantly coming in and out? I mean, where does, what is
They
constantly?
have been coming in and out of their yard with the heavy equipment. Not recently, since there has been stuff addressed, but there has been. It has been that way for a while.
So then it sounds like he has tailored back to the request of not coming in out so often.
Because of a complaint against them that had to become to the city commission.
Did you ever address it with him?
Why should we have to address it to him? It's a city issue.
Any other?
Just Watson Baptist Church, we have no problem.
Okay.
I'm Carmen Klein, and I also own a business in town, and basically my concern is, Reese earlier mentioned precedent, I guess. For me, the dangerous precedent would be to allow someone to build up their home, their business for 5 years, and then turn around and push them out. I think that would be very detrimental to the entire town to do that.
Thank you.
Yeah, just to speak to a couple of those comments. You know, we feel the root of this is at the non-disclosure stage when the permit was filed to build the property. Had it been disclosed at that time, even Larry mentioned at the last city commission meeting, we talked about this July 8th, that it would have failed. So, when we talk about 5 years.
I don't believe I said that.
You did.
I didn't say it would have failed. I said, I would not believe I said that. Anyway, go ahead.
If we talk about 5 years establishment, we better consider the 7 years that we've owned this property. And so ordinance is in place to protect residents, specifically in the R1. So where are the protections for residents? If we're gonna speak numbers, 7 and 5, you know, we've been in our property, establishing that, adding to it 7 years. It's not about uprooting a business, it's about making it right. And it's a square trying to be pushed into a round hole. It doesn't fit in the area it is. It's good for Washburn to have an additional business, of course. But like was stated earlier, this is a piece where the city can work with that entity to put it in the right space, right spot. But we have commercial zoning, industrial zoning. That's
We've lived 11 years, man, seen any change, no noise, nothing. He does a nice job, he's a good neighbor, I see no problem with him.
I live right across the alley for the Cooley from the Kings, and I guess I just recently have heard about this, and I personally have no issues whatsoever with his business. I'm happy to see a business owner succeeding in town of Washburn. I think we need more taxpayers, especially with all these taxes coming up. But I don't want to get in the middle of it, but I have a small child, and I live right there, and I guess I've never had any concern. He does clean out the alley sometimes, you know, when snow gets too thick and things. So I guess, you know, as a neighbor with a small child, things, I just never had any concern whatsoever, so.
Anyone else?
Question for the young lady, you said constantly coming in and out. What is constantly? Once a day, twice a day, 5 times an hour?
I already stated what I meant.
Well, I'm
That
looking
it has-
for clarification.
it
I'm
has-
thinking a lot of other people
It
are too.
has calmed down since the complaint has been put in, but it was a constant in and out with the tractor, whatever, he's got excavators, whatever he has, that it has been a loud nuisance coming in and out of there, into the area. I can hear it daily.
I have ran quite a lot of Mr. King's equipment. I've driven his truck, run his excavator. I run payloaders, and they are all quiet to, you know, standards within. They all have the correct exhaust systems on them and stuff. They're, you know, my stuff, I have trace pipe stuff. You want noise, that'll give you noise.
Quick question, sir. So you have operated the equipment?
Yes.
So in a previous meeting, it was stated that they had no employees?
I was not a paid employee. I was doing a neighborly thing, helping Boo. He had helped me, so there was no monetary exchange.
Yes, thank you.
I don't want to keep going around and around, but we have addressed the permitted, when we got the permit for the house and the shop, we had already lived here for 2 years with equipment. It was never something done under the table or trying to go around back door. It was very clear that we were putting in a shop and would have equipment there. And then a few years after that, we purchased additional land, you know, the 2 coulees from the city to expand our property. So, you know, talking about us trying to do something and then ask forgiveness later, that is not the case at all.
My question is did you, when you stated that you wanted to build this shop, that it was for a business use?
It's a shop.
It's a growing.
I mean, you can have a home
For your
occupation.
business.
We do not have a storefront. We don't have store hours. We do not have customers or products come or go.
That's where that city ordinance comes
But
into
when you
play.
start undermining businesses and start looping everybody as a business, just because we are a corporation, we are no different than an LLC, a DBA. It's Blue and I, husband and wife, 50-50, no employees. We're not this huge commercial entity. I mean, I've joked with friends that sell plunder. They have more traffic, more delivery trucks coming to their door, and people coming and going with their plunder stuff but as a side hustle. Scentsy, Tastily Simple. I mean, you've got people that are contractors. They do woodwork, side. I mean, there's so many side jobs through Washburn. So we're going to specifically say you can't do this particular home occupation. I mean, that's what it seems like they're saying, as a
Any other comments?
You know, there was a comment about the Class A contractor, and that refers to how much money your contract should be, that's it. Okay, I do home repairs, like these things, all my tools sit in the back of a 3/4 ton pickup. For some of the projects I've done, I was required to have a Class B commercial license, or, contractor's license. So, Class A only means that you're gonna work for so many dollars, that's it.
Anyone else? All right. We will close the public hearing, and we will open our regular planning and zoning meeting to discuss the conditional use permit.
I had just one more, the people that wrote in, does that
Yep.
get read, or do you guys get a copy of that?
Yep.
Okay.
Shoot, they're right here, and they were all with no concerns.
Who wants to start? I guess, okay, I'll start. You know, the use of the property has been established for a number of years. I don't see it, you know, when you say a contractor yard, what I envision is a lot of materials that people store there. And, you know, whether they sell them or have for their own use, but they store a lot of materials there, you know, that they would maybe use it in the whole next year or whatever. You know, from what I see, I don't see a lot of material stored there. I think everything I see stored there is probably for use on what you've been doing. I'm not sure. Trucks and machinery, I think it's pretty much been established that they're not going in and out on a regular basis. You know, the property is very well cared for, very well maintained. And I know that there was the picture of all the dirt area. Well, it's a work in progress, you know. It's, and sometimes it takes a while. You know, you cannot, if he's working on his own property to make it better, you cannot say that is affecting, in effect, a contractor job. That is his own personal thing. Anybody can do that in their own yard. You know, you can bring in, hire people to come in and do all the work in the yard you want. So whatever he does in his own yard, as far as noise, working in your own yard, you know, it's just a fact of life. That's what happens when you improve stuff. You know, Richard touched on the you know, this property was basically useless, you know, full of junk. You know, they not only did they clean it up, you know, trying to make it look better, but it put more property on the tax rolls also, which is a good thing. You know, the more we can get on the tax rolls, the better we are. I really don't feel it should be the city's job to try and, you know, force a business out of town. I just think that's really bad. You know, getting a reputation of, well, let's see, I started a business here, but now I got to leave, you know, because somebody's complaining. That would not be a good reputation for Washburn to get. You know, a conditional use permit, I guess, in my thought, you know, would, as long as it's just for the Kings only, you know, yeah, it was mentioned starting a precedent. Well, you know, every case, you know, looked at on an individual basis, you know, and that's why there are things like conditional uses, because it applies to one thing. It doesn't apply to everybody. You know, as far as, you know, I think maybe one of the requirements would be a specific, you know, route in and out, you know, the shortest way out of town. So, you know, we don't want, obviously don't want them driving through town, you know, unless you're going to a job. you know, I just.
So how would
like I said-
driving through town be different than just driving through this neighborhood?
Well, because you're impacting West Street. You know, if you take your shortest way out of town, that way you don't drive over here and go down and drive down Main Street.
So you're saying there is an impact on the streets that,
Well, I'm not saying that. What I'm saying is, you know, people are concerned about possible safety and trucks driving around, maybe you can't, well, head out of town the shortest way possible, that's what I'm saying. You know, so. I guess that was my comment.
I just feel like we get very lost in a lot of issues with this one. The central issue is a commercial business in a residential zone area. And we talk about the vehicles, and we talk about the beautification of the property and the property values, and I mean, there's so many other issues that distract us. And I always have to come back to the central issue, is that it is zoned a residential lot. And we allow for home occupations, which there are a lot of, and I would completely encourage. But this didn't, in my first, and I've read this about 1,000 times, it doesn't feel like it hits that home occupation that we have in our zoning ordinance. And the idea of pushing somebody out of town, a business out of town, of people out of town, is absolutely, and you know, not what we or anybody in town would want to do. There are lots of businesses that operate in town in a commercially zoned area, you know. And I guess that's what I always keep coming back to. Is there another way? Is there another, you know, you don't see a lot of dirt work companies in the middle of a residential neighborhood. That's, you know, but this is such a tough call. And there are so many different ways to look at this, and I think either way we set a precedent. Either way we go on this. Because either we say, this is okay, we'll allow this, yet there are other folks in town who are skirting the issue with their business, they're on their residential place, and we're just saying, it's okay. That we've allowed this 5 years. Okay, we allow it. And we kind of open it up to a lot of things. If we say this isn't okay, and we're going to draw this hard line, then here we go. We're going to have the city cracking down. Oh, they got one big vehicle there. Oh, they've got they're running some sort of business there. And I don't think the city wants to be in the middle of that either. And I don't know. Those are my kind of my thoughts on this. It sets a really hard line either way.
your turn? Our board doesn't really have a mandate where we go out looking for things
Right.
that don't fit the zoning. But I kind of think our board has a mandate that when we get a complaint from constituents that say, you're not upholding your zoning regulations the way you should be, that we need to address that. And I don't see that giving someone a conditional use permit after the fact really does that. To me, it's like, the precedent I see stronger than any other is that we have a lot of people that come to planning and zoning asking for variances. And we try really hard to be fair, but there are always 15 little things that you have to make a decision on. And I think if we grant a conditional use permit for this just because it's been in operation 5 years, then we're saying, you don't really need to come to us and ask for permits and things. Just do what you're going to do, and we'll give you forgiveness later. So that's the issue that I'm stuck on.
And we might, the Kings run a good operation. The
I know.
the next folks may not, and that's where it starts to snowball. You open it up too.
Because we've had other people that we've said, I'm really sorry that you have all this property and it would be so good to do this with it, but that doesn't fit our zoning and we have to have zoning so that our property values maintained in this community. So, yeah, it's a hard, I want there to be a compromise somewhere, but I can't think of one. I mean, I want there to be a piece of public property that's up for back taxes, that would be a perfect place to store equipment that we could just give them. But I don't know of anything like that. So, yeah. I know that, you know, the weight of trucks and all of that, those are all issues, but to me, the big one is the fact that it's a commercial business in a residential neighborhood. And yeah, there are other people running businesses, and, you know, I just got to say they're probably in the same vulnerable position that the Kings are, that if their neighbors object to how much traffic is coming in, or the speed at which their business is growing, yeah, we'll be looking at whether that's appropriate also.
Well, I have a question. You said the problem with the commercial business in the residential area. You know, most home occupations are commercial business.
I guess I'm drawing a line between home occupation and something that their business doesn't really take place there. It's the equipment in and out. It's not the same as home occupation. But
And we define home occupation, you know, secondary to the use of the residential dwelling does not create excessive noise, traffic, or conflict with adjoining uses. And that conflict with adjoining uses is what I keep coming back to, because it's an established residential neighborhood, and then we have a commercial business. I keep trying to find a way to make this work. I really do.
Yeah, because I think you have improved the property and done amazing things to your residential area. But I also see the next 5 people that come and sit in front of the board, we haven't got a leg to stand on as far as saying, no, you can't do that, but they could do this.
Yeah, I disagree with that, because that's why you come to the board, you know, and this is a conditional use, not a, you know, not like a zoning change or something where anybody can just bring something in, so.
And we have had people, I'm thinking of like, there's a storage unit, a guy that wanted to build storage units. I think that was a rezoning, I can't quite remember, but, you know, we have had people prior to starting any work on their property, they've come to us and said, I'm thinking of doing this. Does this work? And we've discussed it, and they've taken it back. They said, no, I'm not going to deal with that, or that's not the way I want to go. So, you know, unfortunately, it probably could have been addressed early on. Maybe the city could have noticed earlier. Maybe, you know, there's so many things, 5 years in the making, that could have happened, and that's why this is such an unfortunate spot we're at.
I don't have much to say except I agree, but the position that we're put in is because 5 years ago we didn't have the person, and your business may have grown, so it may not be that 5 years ago this is what was going on, but in that shop situation where they wanted storage buildings, it was brought to us, this is what I want to do with my business, and that's when the homeowners came and talked with us. I hesitate to say that the board can really say, no, you can't run that business anymore. I don't know that the city commission would really go with that recommendation from us. But I agree that it's a hard position we're in, because the board is created to tell the homeowner before they're doing that no, this isn't, or if you would have got that conditional use 5 years ago, then when we do have the complaint, these are the permissions that they had. That's how that process is supposed to work. So I don't know that we have a means to do anything now. I don't know that I'm comfortable setting that precedent of, you know, like Reese said, it's, you know, I'm not saying it's better to ask forgiveness than permission, that I don't truly see that that's what this is, but it can be viewed that way. And so someone in a different situation, well, you've already done that for them, that's what I'm doing. I appreciate the fact that it sounds like things have slowed down, so you've taken into consideration those complaints. You may or may not have. It sounds like all of that communication is what this board is for, and we can't really do anything after the fact. I just am not comfortable saying, sorry, we're not going to give you your conditional use. Where does your business go? It's not something I'm comfortable doing, but I'm also uncomfortable telling the homeowners that do have, sounds to me like valid complaints. I know there's differing opinions, but I have to take that person's word as they see what they see. That's their knowledge, even if somebody else doesn't take that same knowledge. So I don't know if I even would have a vote either way.
Can I ask a question? So for that kind of residential lot, I guess what are the accepted conditional uses and what are the options? Because those are kind of specified in ordinances usually.
Single-family home, church, school, public facility, accessory building, and home occupation are permitted. Conditionally permitted, we do set aside a conditionally permitted use that is aside from the permitted use, that's bed and breakfast, hospital, clinic, long-term care, apartments, and public utilities.
So would this be falling under utilities or what would that be?
I think public utilities would be more like the WRT building or, something like that.
That would be a home occupation.
Right.
Yep. And then home occupation is secondary to the dwelling unit, does not create excessive noise, traffic, or conflict with adjoining uses. That is our definition of home occupation.
I'm hoping someone can answer this question. There's been a lot of discussion on, excuse me, I've got a cold, so I'm struggling a little bit to speak, but on special assessments, there's been a lot of discussion on special assessments and taxation. Can someone answer the question from the standpoint of commercial zoning versus a residential zoning? Is there a difference in how those the taxation is applied?
I believe there is, yes.
And is it half as much? Is it?
That would have been a good question to research, but
I don't
yeah.
think there was a cap on commercial, wasn't there? Or for
I think everything had a cap. It's just different rates, I think, from commercial.
And so then the next question is with the conditional use permit, what I'm understanding is if we would approve this, we would be approving it for the taxation basically then that everyone else in that particular district is.
Meaning it would remain a residential?
It would remain residential. They would be taxed as residential, where other businesses would be taxed as commercial if they fit into that zone.
Brian, you want to look at that?
I've had a couple thoughts. You guys mind if I come up and chat with you?
Come on up.
That was one of the things that was going through my head is, if this is approved for commercial use, would it then be taxed under any new special assessments as a commercial property? The other thing, I'm sorry everybody, my name is Ryan Oberg. I'm assessor for the city of Washburn, as well as most of the organized jurisdictions in the county. I'm involved pretty extensively with county planning and zoning, and what it all comes down to is we really focus on conflict resolution, and there's usually an area to meet in the middle, and it seems to me the biggest conflict in this scenario is a threshold of activity. So if you were to, say, approve a variance or a conditional use, you would then have to establish what would be an acceptable, threshold of activity. Would it be, I've heard arguments from both sides. I tend to feel like it's exaggerated on both ends. But if you could establish, that threshold of activity that could be maintained and accepted, and followed, and that could potentially, just everybody follow the good neighbor rule, that would be great. The other thing to consider is how would that be policed, and who's going to be trusted to police that. The other thing, when considering property values and possible impact on value, is you have the principle of substitution, whereas if you had two identical properties, say a house identical to Bain's house, but in a different location that you were confident was not going to be impacted by this house, would those properties be worth the same value? It's consensus, probably not. If one property identical to another is burdened with something that the other property doesn't suffer, the other property is probably going to be more attractive to your typical buyer. Just things to think about. This would be a real tough thing for me to deal with. I'd hate to see somebody have to uproot their stuff, but I understand the concerns. I don't know if the safety concern would be one of my biggest concerns, because I'm well aware of any operator with reckless tendencies in the industry tends to weed himself out within the first couple of years. So I'm available for questions if anyone has.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't know if that answered your question or not.
Yeah, I think I did get the question answered, that there probably is a difference in taxation, and there is a difference, and the conditional use permit, I believe, would not change that. That would have to, if I'm understanding correctly. The other question that just goes through my mind is from a process standpoint. I've done the planning and zoning board for quite a while. I don't remember proceeding like this before. So what goes through my mind is, from a process standpoint, how did we get here? How did we get here? How was there a misunderstanding? How did that happen? And because I don't believe that the Kings would intentionally do something that they did feel was in line with the zoning. On the other hand, we haven't really had anything like this crop up before, and we've had other things come before. So I don't know that anybody's going to be able to answer that question, but I hope that we really look at our forms and our processes as people are looking to build on their properties and things, and be sure that we're asking very direct questions about how they're going to use the property, because if we were ever faced with something like this again, we can turn back to those questions and say, you were forthright, or no, you were not forthright with it. And we have no way of I believe you. I believe, but it would be a lot better position for us to be in.
There's such thing as a conditional use permit, okay? I'm trying to get out of the box. So, is there such a thing as saying we would grant a conditional use permit for a period of 1 year, and attached to that would be that there needs to be a certain threshold of activity maintained, that the taxation would change over to commercial, and that there would be, I don't know, that's as far as I got with out of the box. I'm trying to come at some kind of conflict resolution. I like that term.
I'd be real leery on a 1-year conditional use.
All right.
Well, and even with a conditional use permit, you still have some sort of, like Ryan said, policing function. I mean, obviously this has not been policed in 5 years, so
well, we don't have
where are we
any.
going with yeah, and it just opens up there are other properties that are being used as quasi-commercial properties in the area, and it just sort of says, okay, and I don't know how you limit it. I don't want to even limit you guys to the type of trucks and the type of machinery, because that limits your business. I don't want to limit your business. I want you to have a side dumper or whatever you need. But I also don't want a side dumper running through a residential neighborhood. You know, because that's where it goes at the end of the day.
You don't park stuff there if you're not, you generally don't park stuff there, your trucks and stuff there at night, do you? Or, I mean, do you bring them home every day, or, huh?
Just during winter.
Yeah.
You know, have it for snow removal, so,
Yeah.
whatever.
You know, it says here that prior to the decision on any conditional use, the Planning and Zoning Commission may stipulate, you know, such conditions and restrictions, so.
There is a conditional commission.
Yeah.
You know, so.
I know, and it sounds great.
Yeah, but
I
how do we maintain conditions?
Yep.
Okay.
Right.
So riddle me this, are we at a point where we take a vote on our recommendation and throw it all into the lap of the city commission because they get final say anyway?
Could do that.
And we tell them what our concerns are? Because, I mean, we can argue all evening and come up with what we think is the answer, and then it's going to go to the city commission, and they'll also have to argue it out. No?
Well, I'm sure there'll be questions.
Yeah, I think we have a responsibility to make the recommendation on what was brought before us and what we published meeting notices on. So,
Right. And
yeah.
I'm just thinking that recommendation, whether it goes yay or nay, is going to be a split recommendation and not a universal, unanimous vote. So when we give them that recommendation, I think we are obligated to tell them that, you know, we're at a split vote on this and here's where we are.
Right, yeah, exactly.
And they have the public record, they have the recording.
Yeah, they have the recording,
minutes.
so they should be able to hear all the testimony that we've received. I don't know. On the other hand, they've already heard this once, and they sent it back to us.
I, you know, before you close this portion, I guess I really do think it's important that both parties are, you know, doing the right thing. You know, the Baines have come forward with their concerns.
Exactly.
You know, that is part of the process. And the Kings as well, they're trying to maintain their business. You know, I respect both parties. We are in a very difficult position here.
Do you have any other questions, issues we want to go through?
I have nothing left in my box,
Or outside of your box?
or outside my box.
I'll make the motion to recommend approval of the conditional use permit for the Kings to the city commission.
Do you have a second?
I will second to move it along, because it is, I mean, our board's responsibility is to
Right.
move it to the commission.
Any further discussion?
Lord, no.
Larry?
Yes.
Ma'am? I'll have to say yes.
Carol?
No.
Jim?
No.
No.
So that'll be the recommendation to the city commission, and then the city commission will make the final decision on it.
Do we have anything else on our agenda, anything that came up?
Nothing on the agenda.
Mhm.
Thank you, one and all.
Thank you, everybody.
So this isn't only a business, it is somebody's livelihood.
somebody's job.
Long there,
How they
Richard.
keep themselves free.
You get a new one tomorrow.
My wife said,